Yes, please.
Good morning. Sidali from Algeria. In my point of view, if we continue to say that please respect the flight plan, please respect the EOBT, and relying of the bounty of the people, we will not see much improvement if there is no accountability from the aircraft operator or from the ATC to follow the rules. What are you expecting to make procedures that to oblige people to adhere to this to those suggestions? Just an example. In Algeria, in May, we received a complaint from our neighbor, Marseille ACC, because a flight took off 2 hours before its CTOT. So our management decided to put an end to this behavior, and now each deviation from CTOT for a regulated flight or deviation from the EOBT for not regulated flight is deemed as an ITFCM incident, and the controller has to file a report to explain why he didn't respect. And now, with the statistic, we see a higher adherence to the rules. So I think we have to see accountability and not to rely on the bounty of people.
Jenny, thank you.
Yes, indeed, maybe some force, some time would work, but again, with the example of the Yoyo, our staff started 2 years ago, following your DSG decision and agreement, to start looking at the Yoyo. Personally, I would have preferred a solution where any flight who is descending more than 2,000 feet, because of quadrantal reason, of course, more than 2,000 feet, I would have rejected the flight. We cannot do that, of course, because anyway, we want to preserve the right of the airline to avoid the regulation. Unfortunately, our experience says that no flights are then respecting the flight plan. The network manager is not in a position to force anything. We are not policemen. We don't have the right to modify anything in the flight plan that is still a property of the aircraft operator. So that is why, if these things have to be decided then at higher level, then the network manager can implement it.
Also, with my safety hat, I think this enforcement measure and monitoring should be outside of the ops, should not be for the pilots or air traffic controller to, on the day of the operations, file a report of deviation. We should capture this outside and then take actions with the respective airline and respective behavior, rather than punishing everyone. And your example, Jenny, was a great one. Yeah, we should allow continuing the flight planning. Thank you.
Yeah, Louise Brennan from Aer Lingus here. I think we have an issue around the pilots not requesting the direct routes, etc., until the culture changes with the ATCOs, whereby the ATCOs are giving that permission. The perception is they're the air traffic controllers. They're controlling the air traffic, so they know that it's okay for the pilot to go that way. So that's the perception of the pilot, that if I ask it, they won't say yes unless this is okay. So until that culture changes, I don't think, no matter how much we force the pilots to fly the route they're filed, there'll still be that, oh God, we're really late today, I'm really going to try and get it direct. And there will be that perception around requesting the direct route. And until the ATCOs continuously say, no, it's not, you have to file your filed route, I don't think that'll change from the pilot's perspective a huge amount.
Ken?
I think that, and I think Gianni alluded to it as well, and I think that's also our colleague from Algeria, that this is, we all need to help and to take the responsibility where we can to help that this is followed, and that is within the ANSP to help to follow the rules with aircraft operators, with air traffic control. Everyone needs to give their part to it, and then we will have a better situation.
When I was working as a controller, of course, the pilot, you want to get rid of the flight as soon as possible with the highest possible level of safety. So we were giving direct routes, sometimes sending during the night, coordinating a flight from Brindisi to Karlsruhe straight away through Switzerland, so that kind of things. But again, we are not in that situation anymore. So you are absolutely right. It's embedded again into the culture, is what in presentation. That's why the invitation to the pilots to behave, the invitation to the controllers to behave. So that message that is only addressed to 280 people will be the subject of a campaign, of a leaflet, or some message that we will definitely spread as much as possible before the summer into the NOP portal with other ways. We don't know on our website. Still, we are in the discussion how to do it. Hopefully, this message will be taken and people will start behaving differently. Of course, whenever it's to change culture of people, it takes a lot of time for any matter. Sometimes it takes dozens or hundreds of years. But in this case, if the problem is on the table, people have to be sensibilized to understand that this may entail a danger. So that is why we do hope that at least we start this behavior. Maybe in 5 or 6 years, this problem will not exist anymore. I hope so.
Well, Johnny, coming back on that, we have a city pair that we get on a daily basis, 5 flights a day, we get a direct on a specific airspace. It's not plannable, but we get it every day. It saves us 10 minutes flying time. So if we get it every day, why is it not available then?
I mean, you are right. Then at the end, why a route is not existing over there? And that is about the NSP or, I mean, something. When you have this kind of things, so I think Razvan team is the right team to address this issue and maybe to establish a new route of that path. Or that route, the opening and the availability of that route is wide and more. Maybe there is a rather restriction that is hampering to fly that route. I don't know what is the reason over the route that you're mentioning. But there are things that can be done whenever these cases are experienced every day.
I have another one, because you're saying you're supporting from IFPS with shorter routes or if we have an issue. Last weekend we had an issue with a low-level route out of Barcelona to Amsterdam. There was a zigzag route offered by IFPS. So your system, if you don't want that to happen, your system should be as good as possible without offering zigzag routes.
But, so the routes are available. So if that routes are not available, then at the end, the example that I gave before, if there is a shorter route or a straight route, that our staff are the best position in order to offer it. But again, the availability of the routes is not in the end of the network manager. It's the NSP that decides, the national authority that decides which are the routes that are available. So we execute, of course we give our suggestion, but then if the country says, I would like to have this route closed from this time to this time and the only available reroute is this one, a corner, the system, we cannot close the system. We cannot close certain routes or not make them available on our own initiative without the consensus of the state that is the owner of the airspace. Sorry. Again, but I insist, our staff can give you the best possible option.
Okay.
Hi, Tony. I'm sitting thinking, how long does it take to fix a problem? In Janice's slides, we saw that we did the flight adherence trials in 2010, and then again in 2012. And the evidence from that trial showed that we managed delay better, we reduced the instance of regulations, and here we are 9 years on talking about the same problem. So I think we need to do something different, but I don't know what it is, other than pleading for the airlines to help us. As we keep saying year after year, we will be in the same conversation this time next year if we don't all play in the same boat. So we need to do something different this year. So I would request as an ANSP that you help us and file the flight plans that you have to do. We all understand the issues. We're all there to help you. And as Janice just said, the help is available from NMOC, the help is available from ANSPs and their FMPs. And I plead for everybody to cooperate and help each other this summer so that we can have a better one than last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. I have one card which relates to that, and I think also with the point raised by Erlingus, and it's a cultural issue, of course, and goes back to basics and trainings. But how do you ensure the discussion, understandings, requests that happens in these rooms and the other Eurocontrol 4 are cascaded back to our frontline operators, pilots, controllers, in the ops rooms, be them ANSPs or airlines operation rooms or aerodrome operation rooms? What would you do when you go home?
I will just refer to slide number 6.3 of Janice's presentation. I must state I feel personally touched by this point. I understand it was on purpose, and I can assure you that there is at least one dispatcher in one airline, and it is me, who is every time when he is flying, planning and filing the low level to fly below the upper restriction, is informing the crew that they should fly this flight level until the point X to avoid restriction and to not make a problems, to not be an uninvited guest in other sector. But contrary, referring to your slide number 3, imagine that between these 2 points, like in our flight from Madrid to Warsaw, I fly 310, let's say, to fly below Swiss restriction. Show me the controller in Spain or in France which doesn't order my flight to go higher, because flight level 310 for him is a problem, so he can solve his personal problem and say, okay, climb 370 and go out from my screen. Although I have informed the crew, we have put the fuel to fly on 310, to fly 310 until the Germany. But I'm sure, I was on my dispatcher flight, on one of the flights. We were filing 310 and just leaving the Poland, we have heard climb 370, and captain is looking at me and said, what should I do now? Should I say, no, I want to stay on 310, or should I follow the advice of the controller? Although we should fly 310 until the Swiss this time.
Jenny, please.
Okay, so then again, if it is a technical, if the higher level is given due to separation purposes, because it may happen, the 310, sorry, I cannot leave you continue at 310 because there are other 2 flights crossing in 20 miles, and that's not good. I cannot give you any deviation, so the easiest way is to offer a different level for radar controller. So, and that is it. I remember a few years ago that there was a problem in one sector, Sierra Hotel Tango in Vienna ACC, and every day they were having a very big over delivery. So the controllers were really crying, saying, what is happening here? Then we discovered that that flow that was passing, that was climbed all the time by in Spain. So 2,000 miles away. Then at the end, you see, if the controller doesn't know what can happen 2,000 miles away downstream. So unless, that's why I wrote, unless the controller is aware of the impact downstream, that is not the case, it will never be the case, I suppose, this is known by us, or unless it's dictated by any other reason, leave the flight at that level. That is quite sure. Sometimes I imagine the pilot that sees in his FMS the strange route, or the descent to the flight level much lower than the cruise level, and they say, who is this flight dispatcher who planned this flight plan? So sometimes it's not even known by the pilot the reason why the flight plan is like that. So I will fly straight. So that's why the information campaign is fundamental, not only here, but again, we'll go through ODSG, we'll go at the AOG, Aircraft Operator Group, and we'll make some campaign leaflet or whatever, as I said before. Then we do hope, I'm quite sure that if this message arrives with the right intensity, and people understand what can happen after, then I believe that, and I do hope, that this Dutch behavior will start to be followed by controllers and by pilots.
Chris, on the weather one? Joe, you want to come in before that, and then the weather one?
Maybe just on this issue of cheating the system. I think, first of all, there was an Algerian colleague who mentioned, aircraft leaving earlier from the slot, from the CTOT. I think in the EU states and those part of the EU, there is a monitoring of that, and there is a reporting mechanism to the Commission. And at a certain point, when we trigger certain amounts of non-conformity with the slot, then there is action taken between the Commission and that state, that supervisory authority. So for non-EU states, I think, as you have indicated, it is a national responsibility to deal directly with the airline concerned. but we are there to support. We are there to work together. If, you know, what should be done, what others do, how can we inform you, what data do you need, is all information that we have that is part of the process. Because for us, it is, the network is wider, and basically some is governed by the procedures or the regulatory procedures of the EU. Others we have to do by collaboration, but not enforcement. So I think that's the first point. The second point is we are looking now at why aircraft are invited or uninvited guests in which sector or not sector. They come when we are not expecting them, and what can we do about it? As of 1st of January 2020, you know, airlines will be charged according to where they fly, not according to where the flight plan is. And that will cut out those airlines who, for whatever reason, you know, are trying to beat the system in terms of route charges. So you fly, and you will pay for whoever you have where you're flying. So there is no need to file a flight plan different from where you intend to fly, because you will still be charged for where you flew. So I think that's an important change. We will see how to implement it. There is a discussion even on today on the practicalities of that, but the system is there ready, will be ready as of the 1st of January. I think Jenny has mentioned, and outside you will find them as well, and answers our Dutch colleague, in terms of Yoyo flights and the strange flight plans going 90 degrees. Yes, you know, they are available in the system, but I think we have to beat this. We have to make sure that the system tells us as well, yes, it is possible, because legally it is possible, but this is a strange behavior. It pops up in front of for IFPS staff, and then they discuss with the state, they discuss with the airline, they discuss with the NSP, how is this possible? Because then we are talking about practical and the example. So what we have developed and what we continue to develop is how does the system alert us when there is this behavior. It leaves us to controllers giving directs and pilots asking for directs. That is where we are. That is where I think there's the culture change that is needed. We have to, and I think we have to address this also in the context of the volatility. And it may not be the only reason we have for volatility, but it is one of the reasons. So this is where I agree with Stu. We've been talking for this for the last 10 years. But if we eliminate the bits that we already can, then it's a question of the culture. And I think there are a number of ANSPs on the instruction of the NSAs who are quite strict, who tell their controllers, don't change the flight plan. Yeah, they will fly what they have filed. And do not offer, and unless you really need to, in terms of safety or separation, do not accept. Especially those whom, through all the measures that we are doing for the summer, when we strategically put flights away from where we don't want them or we want to reduce, if on the day everybody is brought back to where he wanted to go in the first place, we've lost. Why are we planning all this strategic spreading of the traffic? And this is what we had actually in one state. And the state was complaining, yeah, we've agreed for you to move them out, and on the day they're still flying. And basically, what we said is, okay, tell your controllers, unless there's an operational reason why you want to move them, on safety, whatever, but do not offer and do not accept a request. And basically, the problem in that airspace has gone significantly down. So I think we have to work on all these fronts, but I think we are even concerned on the not just on the over deliveries part, but on this last element. We are strategically moving flights here, there, and everywhere, and then on the day, everybody is doing what he likes. It doesn't work.
Thank you, Joe. Before I address the question on whether to Chris, to build on that, is related to the same? Okay, please, comment.
Yeah, it's related to what Gianni mentioned about the slot tolerance window. We have a slot tolerance window of -5 plus 10 minutes, and you briefly mentioned -3 plus 3, which is much better, of course. We're talking about the EUBT, sort of that the airlines should stick to the EUBT, and we would like to, as few regulations as possible. But with no regulations, we have the departure tolerance window, which is -15 plus 15, which is half an hour. That's far too much, according to my opinion. So we have a big problems at many airports with flights arriving too early, up to 15, 20 minutes too early, because ATC lets them go within the rules. That's something that needs to be changed, I think.
Very valid comment. Jemma.
Yes, good morning all. Jean-Marc from the European Commission, and I think thank you, Joe, for your intervention. I would like to make some statements and seen from the Commission point of view, and a major question to be addressed by everyone here in this forum. First of all, I would like to thank the NM for organizing this forum. I think it is a good opportunity. This yearly event is expected and is followed by the Commission because it is a unique opportunity to feel the brunt of what's going on the operational side and see what really are the major issues seen from the operational point of view. We've seen what happened in summer 2018 and we were quite worried, and we see that summer of 2019 we have to prepare for a worse scenario. There are many measures indeed, but everything relates, and it was clearly stated yesterday by Gianni about staffing. The problem of the capacity crunch, the weather delays, and also some industrial actions relate to staffing issues. These staffing issues, most of the time we listen that it is to blame is RP2. Indeed, RP2 focused on cost efficiency, but the money is there. So I think this should relate to the wrong decision that were taken in 2014, and it's not RP2 to be blamed for that. It's not. It's perhaps a part, but a small part of the discussion. Now, what we see and what is important for us, we should move for a network-oriented approach. This was clearly identified yesterday and again today. We need to have this network-oriented approach. And what the Commission is expecting from everyone here is collaboration and commitment. I remind everyone about the setup of the Network Functions Implementing Rule that has been repealed now. Today has been published a new Network Functions Implementing Rule, which number is 2019-123. It is the new Network Function Implementing Rule, was adopted by the Council on 24th of January and is published today. It is in the official journal. The setup in 2011 of the network functions and the network management was all about collaboration and commitment from operational stakeholders. So I think the aim there was to ensure that all operational stakeholders agree on this network-oriented approach. This is the meaning of the regulation. This was the meaning of the Commission at that time with the Member States. If we fail this summer, it means that we had a wrong decision at that time, and we should aim for a more top-down approach, which in a way it would be a pity. I think it is for operation to discuss between them and to agree and commit to what they agree to. Anyway, the Commission will follow closely what will happen during this summer. Already we are preparing for the next Single Sky Committee in March this year, which will happen on 26th and 27th of March this year, where we'll make some recommendation to Member States about this capacity crunch issue, the staffing, and the performance of the network for summer 2019. I think it's not just here we are between operational stakeholders, but it's not just an operational stakeholders issue. Member States have to be involved more in the process and to follow more on the performance of the network and this network-oriented approach. If we look at, coming back on what you said indeed, Joe, about the ATFM measures compliance, I remind that Regulation 255/2010 on ATFM expects from Member States to monitor the adherence to ATFM measure. This is followed by the Commission, and regularly I manage the file personally and regularly remind member states of their monitoring duties and to report to the Commission when there's not adherence to ATFM measures. So as I said, member states should be more involved, and for sure, as was pointed out by Joe, there will be an escalation process and member states will be involved in this escalation process for summer 2019. Now, coming more on my main question and the main issues, I would say. CDM is at the core of the process of the network functions and the network management. However, we should ensure that CDM leads to decision. And in that decision, we should ensure that it is a network-oriented approach, network-minded, for the benefit of the network and the end users. We should not forget we are all working here for the public traveling and the passengers. This is most of the time we're discussing between ourselves, but we should look at the passenger experience, as was reminded by ACI, look at the passenger experience. So this is a major issue. And how to ensure that we have this network-minded approach is the issue. What does that mean? How can we ensure, and this is a question that I'll bring to everyone here, how should we ensure that when we see the issues of volatility, the number of regulation, of over-regulation during some days in the network, that at a certain point in time, the network perspective, the one having the best view is the network manager. So how should we ensure that at a certain point in time, the NM leads the decision-making process? We listened yesterday to some NSPs being reluctant, saying, I would not agree to having the NM saying I should put out this regulation because it is not worthwhile and it is adding more constraints. So the question is how we ensure this network-minded approach. Another aspect is, and if we want a network-minded approach with the NM to be in the lead, we should ensure that we build trust, and it's an issue about confidence in the system. Now my question, this is more to NSPs, how can we ensure that at the FMP level, the FMP managers have the right experience, the right expertise, and the empowerment, talking with the ACC supervisors, to lead the discussion and lead to the decisions. This, for me, FMP managers to have the right expertise is a major issue. I have some expertise on the subject and I know what I'm talking about. All these leads that we should need some cultural changes. I think if we want to accommodate further growth, I already at one of the NMBs, I said we are perhaps reaching the capacity level of the network today. It was said yesterday we're perhaps at breaking point of the network, but we're certainly at breaking point with the practices we are having now. So this means a cultural change, and for me this is a managerial issue, and this relates to your question also, Tony. What is your uptake of this discussion today towards your management and tomorrow in the ops room for the summer 2019? Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Marc, for these words and thoughts and reality checks that we have to involve more the states, how we monitor, and again, back to these basic questions. How do we take it from here back home into the operations? So I'm waiting your reactions, please.
Hi, Yvonne De Silva from Aer Lingus. I'd just like to go back to the weather discussion this morning, if you don't mind. Just the words that I was hearing were pre-planning, collaboration, stability and commitment. And somebody mentioned earlier on about the model that's at Heathrow at the moment. And as a frequent operator for Heathrow, we would partake in that particular model, and it works. And it's not the first time that it's been mentioned at one of these forums or even at a weather forum previously. So from an operator point of view, it absolutely gives us stability. It gives the airport stability and even the flow. And more importantly, it gives our customers stability, because the day before we can go out to them and we can tell them that their flight is cancelled, etc. So my question really is, there is a model out there that works. It's been mentioned numerous times. Why can't we look at that and take it and see how we can apply it to other airports across the network? Rather than trying to find something new, let's try and use that and work it at other airports.
I think while the airports are thinking how to react to that, how they can borrow this Heathrow, Jens, Scandinavian. Airlines.
Thank you very much. I just want to compliment what you said here. Also, Heathrow is doing a thing which is very good in relation to the EU 261. They are actually publishing on a website the flights that has been coordinated and cancelled by request of reducing the capacity. And this we can use afterwards in case some of the passengers go into a lawsuit saying that we were actually obliged to cancel these flights to save the overall capacity. And I hope that other airlines will follow these examples. Thank you. Airports.
Yep, thanks. In the back.
Hi, Wendy Howard-Allen from NATS. I just want to add to that as well, because my thought is, how do we encourage other airports and operators to try and pick up that model, especially when weather is forecasted across many airports, and we see that quite often in the lower airspace in the TMA, southeast of England. And it ends up then being a huge problem in the airspace when operators get airborne knowing full well that they can't land because of the parameters at their particular airport. We then go into mass diversion scenarios, which can become very, very difficult, complex, and ultimately unsafe.
Yeah. Any take from any other airports? Or Matis, you want to come in, please?
Yeah, probably just wanted to summarize a little bit. I have one card here which I will summarize, but also with others we had from the weather, but also from yesterday. I think we have discussed from various angles the need for cultural change and the question, how do we take that back and how do we put that in practice? I think that's one thing, but another thing which is related to the weather question, but it's the same for the operational question, is the question on how do we distribute information cross sectors. On the longer trajectory, cross-border, I think is still quite a big issue. So the question is asked if we share a common picture, or based on the example from Poland or Polish Air, I think it's the same. There might be a reason that a flight needs to change level for a certain sector for technical reasons, but the next one, the next sector, the sector after, 2,000 miles further, how do they know? Or how does that flight probably goes back to what was originally planned? So I think there is still a gap. And I saw this question coming up from several cards. There is still a gap on does everybody have really that network picture and that network mindset? And I think that's where the ops room comes into place, where the network manager comes into place. So that needs better coordination, I think.
Minik, please.
The question I just gave you about what people will be taking from here today, I think we are all, if I'm not mistaken, at a managerial level. In my discussions yesterday with several managers during the breaks and lunch, what I understood was that we understand each other. At this level, we understand each other. So there is no gap in understanding and the way forward, more or less. But is there the same understanding at the operational level? People who will execute the work, who will carry out the tasks, who will carry out the communication and CDM between different partners. And two of them said, we need to strengthen this connection, because it's all good, we come here, all of us, we discuss and we all understand at our level. For sure, some of us will make extra effort to make this cascade down and turn into actions like we are doing in NM. But I really want people who have not talked up until now just to express their view. What will they take back to their ops rooms, and what information, what idea they will transmit in terms of the coordination, CDM, and the actions for next summer? Thank you.
Thank you, Minik. It's a very valid point. If any one of us here, I know we are just a simple, small representation of all network operations, but with enough cross, industry representation, ANSPs, airlines, airports, NM, and so forth at quite senior managerial level. What is your take? Just write down one takeout. What will be the first action when you go home? You can share that with us, or you can share it with yourself and your organization. I see already reactions there. One, and then even from.
Mark Hopkins, Delta. So here's a question. I've heard CDM and collaboration thrown a lot this morning. The foundation, the basis for collaboration is information sharing. So whose responsibility is it to develop the communication vehicles to get everybody on board and talking about the same information? Without that, then there are different ideas and different levels of participation. And then at that point, it devolves into a discussion and not true collaboration. So, and just to continue, not take up all the time, the gentleman's presentation about planning, D-1 is really your sweet spot for summer weather, which is mostly air mass type thunderstorms. And it's going to be an overview and a summary of what to expect in certain areas the next day. We all know that. And then on the day of, D0, that's when the forecast tightens up and you can, somebody mentioned 6 hours out. There are forecasting tools that are 90% plus effective at 6 hours plus. So that's a pretty good place to be, to understand what the playbook routes are going to be, what the regulations need to be when traffic gets moved into overcapacity sectors, and how all that delay is managed. And when we talk about collaboration and that D-1 type of situation, there has to be goal setting there. And to understand all the ANSPs, all the operators and airports understand what are the goals that we're working towards, not just general delay reduction or something like that. There has to be specific goals that are put in. Thanks.
Thank you for that question and comments. Let's get back to you with an answer on the CDM. Joe?
I think there was a question about the data and information sharing, which I think is a very valid question. You will have just after lunch a presentation about the new system that we want to implement. And it's exactly aimed for that. From a network perspective, we have data that we don't just want to use ourselves, but it has to be the same picture that is used by the FMPs. And then we can decide, as you say, whether it's the MET forecast or but all the data that we have. A number of ANSPs already today get all our data, and then use that with their specific screens with specific software, and take what they want. We are trying to bridge the gap between data that is used for flow management and data that is used for control, for ATC, for separation purposes. We were never as accurate as what was needed for ATC. It wasn't our purpose. But more and more, with occupancy counts, with arrival managers, we have to have more accuracy in our data, and that is where we are looking, and we even tried trials, -3 plus 7, to try to reduce these buffers that we have, was aimed at getting more accuracy. But getting more accuracy is one thing, and then how to share it. And I think there are ways of sharing it now with B2B, with SWIB. It is maybe not yet widespread, and maybe our systems also need to be upgraded on that, and you will see this afternoon what the plan is. Thank you.
And I think one of the main themes of all the presentations was going back to basic, and one of the Janice, I think, favorite one is the reinstating the pre-tactical phase was also increased regarding weather. And how much we rely, and we go back and we just don't, skip that pre-tactical and go directly to the operations. I don't want to sidetrack on that. What's your takeaway? I'll come back to what's your takeaway, one takeaway. So take your time, take your thoughts, and put one takeaway to go home. Holger.
Yeah, I would just like to pick up some of the questions that are now hanging around in the room. One is what Minik asked, what are you taking home? I mean, though I have spoken already today, what I'm taking home is we are continuing exactly of what we were doing, and this gives me even more dedication what I hearing or what I was hearing, and be sure that we are very, very grateful. I mentioned yesterday we are already trying to get some experience in adherence topics, And I'm very grateful that this is now being picked up by a higher authority and brought into a wider range of ANSP colleagues. Because this makes our life much easier, because I mentioned yesterday already it's very difficult to try to convince controllers at one facility. This is an important thing to do when, let's say, nobody else around you really cares about this type of problem. And I think what makes it different this time is, I also mentioned yesterday, when you come and tell people about flight level adherence, everybody turns away and says, oh, not him again. Once again, we heard it's a topic for 8, probably even more years. There were some trials, all these things. Probably now things have changed. I'm very sure we now need a strong dedication, and we need to be serious about this. And even though it takes some time, and we are getting pushed back once in a while by the behavior of the people, I think we need to stick to this problem. And we have very good indication that it's an important and a very, very serious thing to do. Because one question earlier was probably, and I've heard this in many RAT discussions, we are making up a plan, like the RAT plan for the summer, and in some areas the positive effects will never materialize. Why is that? We can look at certain RAT measures in the past where the advantage never materialized in the end, and then we are faced with discussions like, look, you had a serious problem in this sector, you put up a measure. What happened post-operatively in our analysis, we found that we still got the direct, you still have the delay. So why? It was a measure which was never been really needed. No, it's wrong. Why did the positive effect not materialize? Because the agents in the system, they don't stick to the rules. They just behave the same like they did before. And it was mentioned with summer 2019 measures. We really need to stick to this, and it's simply not tolerable that people just make decisions apart from our plan. The other question I would like to pick up is how can we make sure that coordination is done appropriately throughout the network? And I don't have to look from Spain to Karlsruhe. It's even from the Baltic Sea sector within Karlsruhe down to the Swiss boundary. We have the same problem, and the way we tackle it is, as long as take Karlsruhe as some kind of a mini network where we thought we are big enough just to give it a try for last summer, the adherence thing. As long as we share the same understanding and the same understanding of the importance of the topic, it's everybody's task just to come back to the sector sequence. We don't need to coordinate. A flight enters your sector, you see it's in the wrong level by an indication of the technical system. This is one prerequisite to tackle the workload. Then it's your duty as an air traffic controller to return to the original sequence. If you can't, for some reason, separation or whatsoever, deviate because there are no other possibilities. And if everybody shares the same understanding and we all approach this in a dedicated way, we don't have to question the decision of other controllers because they did it for a purpose. And now it's my duty to return to the original plan. Thank you.
Good morning, Janice from Schiphol Airport. I would like to give one more input from airport's perspective. I would totally agree with Joe and Delta Airlines regarding information sharing being the foundation of everything in what we are doing right now. What you see in our airport is that all the stakeholders have lost trust in the system, and I'm not talking about NM system, but local systems, which need to be replaced. So first thing is system trust in order to start working according to the procedures. Our ground handlers have found ways to manipulate the system, which is obvious. They know what the benefits are of CDM, but they're saying, I don't have another choice right now because I need to explain to my airline why I'm doing certain things. So after we have gained a platform of information sharing, and I'm very sad to see that within CDM, even within CDM, you see a lot of resistance against sharing information through all the stakeholders. And when the stakeholders have gained trust in the system, then you're going to see that they're going to work according to the procedures, etc., and the domino effect is going to be on a positive instead of a negative, which is going right now.
Thank you. Patis, any other things that you have? No? DSNA?
Yes, a short thing to go in the same direction that Ogla. We are doing the same thing at DSNA at the moment, preparing for the summer briefing and statement for ATCOs to begin the changement of, we say, of philosophy of ATCO, not giving direct, respecting flight plan, etc. Of course, it won't change directly, and just after the briefing, direct will continue to exist, but we need them to respect RF a bit more, etc. So we begin the cultural change with you at the same time. Perhaps it's going to be long, but I'm sure that if everyone understands the situation, it's going to work.
Thank you, Jenny, and then Lufthansa, and we just react quickly, if sure. Okay, Lufthansa, please.
I want to react to this on, from the airline side. We raise this information, or we thank you for the information you, from a network manager point of view, provide to us via these presentations, because we bring this in the ops room on the desk to raise the awareness of the guys, which you already mentioned, that the people which are doing their day-to-day business, they are aware about this information, and that on all levels it is worked on it, because in the end of the day they also question, okay, what are we doing to go in are we the mouse in a wheel and run, and does it come to a certain benefit? And yes, we are all part of this, and we raise this awareness in our ops rooms and also in the back office in preparation for like summer 2019 preparation and stuff like this, that these guys also in the ops room, they have the pool picture, and especially, for instance, the huge amount of phone calls and stuff like this. This awareness is important to bring to the ops room, that they don't gonna get fed up about the opponent on the other side, and not to do this. And for instance, I spoke to Nick last night about the engagement of the guys in the ops rooms, and we discussed at the last AOG the point of making or doing a dispatcher's day to engage the people in the ops room. And Nick and I, we discussed, and also I see the progress, and it's on a good way. We have to carefully organize the scare resources of our people in the ops room, yes, but also we need to find ways for them to pull this information in case when they have time and when they have the availability, then to do the same thing what Holger mentioned in our airline ops rooms, that this awareness about the network is available everywhere.
Okay, thank you, Gail, for reminding this. It will be an important event. Still, we are in the pipeline for organizing it, and there will be a proper communication when everything will be ready. But that will be the place that we will talk with the flight dispatchers, and I hope that we'll have the Europa room quite full. So I invite the airlines to send people to us, and so to share that kind of awareness. The other issues about the systems, I would like to remind everybody that the flow management finishes when we assign the slot. Just to make an example, we have a sector with a big overload. So then between the FMP and the NMOC, there is a coordination in place, an agreement, we apply a regulation, and if you look at the graph, everything is fine. How much is the capacity? 40, the system, the TFMS, delivers 40 flights in 1 hour. What happens after the takeoff is not in the hands of the network manager anymore. It's in the hands of a number of people, a number of all the rest of the actors, that of course are pilot and air traffic controllers. That is it, and airports, of course, who manage. Now I go back to what Bjorn correctly said, minus 15, plus 15 for the vast majority of the non-regulated flights. What are we talking about? Is the other mean for a huge unpredictability in the system. How much the tower do respect minus 15 plus 15. And anyway, it's an enormous window, minus 15 plus 15. Impossible. So that should be brought up at higher level on request of the NSP or anybody up to the NMB maybe. And then ICAO, of course, in order to change this rule, because in this modern area we cannot allow anymore this kind of windows uncertainties. We are looking for more predictability, 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 predictability. That's the only thing who gives confidence to the air traffic controllers. And in order to make them feel safe and handle the traffic. I remember when I was working in Milano at the radar, I have colleagues here who were working together 20,000 years ago. And that was the story. There were several stories in reality. I remember at that time the air traffic flow control was not as good as today. It was just done here, I was not here, but people were doing calculation with the paper and there was not real protection for the controls. And I remember myself at the time was a procedural. I remember the old colleagues in Milano that sometimes were suffering with loads of traffic that was arriving and nobody was stopping the traffic. And there were, please believe me, certain situations that were not nice at all with, I'm talking about miscollisions or stuff like that, and one quite bad. So everything, now today we have a system that works, but behind any system there is a human being who shall use it. What's the point of having a marvelous ACDM system then if the times are not updated by the airport guys and the airline, all those who are committed to make this kind of updates and make the system much more reliable. That is it.
Okay, we just took a calculated decision to have a small delay, but we have some buffer, so Lufthansa.
Gianni, but we have to be very, very careful because all these guys which are working towards the aim of predictability and punctuality, they have to have a room of maneuver for flexibility. And we can't cut it down. So you mentioned this 15 minutes of a slot delay window, you know, and you know best because of a lot of feedbacks what happens in an airport vicinity and everywhere. We have to give also the people which are engaged and involved to have a kind of flexibility to make it work and not to overload them with administration or IT which in the end of the day won't lead to the goal which we all want to achieve.
Just to, yes,
30 seconds.
You're absolutely right. This is not exactly the second, but there must be flexibility, but there have to be rules that have to take us into the 21st century really. Because at the moment we have still procedure, airspaces that are all 20 years ago. So with the new system, I hope that with the new system in 4 or 5 years, we will have that possibility to make still the rules to be respected and more restricted windows of tolerance windows in order to make the traffic more smooth and predictable, but of course, and have the right way of flexibility that is still necessary because things, nothing happens really as we think. So there is always something that changes the situation in this world. But we have to be ready to use that flexibility, but still keeping at least an acceptable amount of strict rules that shall be respected whenever the actors can.